EPS is probably going to be bad because SPACs were bad, and we can talk about that. At least, Steve, did you like him being honest about the SPACs, or did you wish he said something different?
Yeah, I love that he was transparent about it and said it was a mistake. But you know what? It's a risk that he had every right to take, and I'm not mad that he took the risk. He had the cash on hand. It wasn't a huge amount of money. And there were some of those platforms that maybe it was too early for them, but they could still be a very large part of society in the future.
Chris, any thoughts on what he said about SPACs?
Whoever suggested the idea to him should be fired immediately. And my guess is that it was probably Sham.
I think actually, so I'll join the dark side with you guys. I think Karp is one of the most cockiest, arrogant businessmen on the planet, and that's why I like him. I think he willingly admitted that the SPACs were a mistake because he made the mistake. I think he and Peter and Sham in 2020 were like, we need to buy revenue, right? They decided to invest in these shitty companies. Now, I think there's a handful of them that I'll talk about in a second that I think are really good. I actually interviewed the CEO of Wejo today, Richard Barlow, and I think they're going to be a company that survives this. But I think Karp made that mistake himself. And because I made a video back in February, I found an old interview from Karp from 2021 where he talked about...
Not to cut you off, but taking ownership is very important, and the fact that the buck stops with him because he's the CEO, regardless of who made the decision, the buck ends with him. Yeah. So I'm glad that he took ownership either way.
Well, I agree, but I do think it was his mistake because there was a moment. Yeah, I should probably find this video. It's like a 30-second clip. There was a moment where he was talking about why they invested in the SPACs, and the argument was that they need to give their product different platforms, electric vehicles, electric airplanes, and robots, all this stuff, to see if the product can be like a case study in all those industries. And then if those companies become really big, they're built on top of Foundry. That was the whole law.
It was a bet that hasn't paid off. That's all.
Yeah, essentially.
I think it's funny that the one of the best capital allocators in the world, in Peter Thiel, couldn't guide this guy away from these SPACs, considering they were all burning cash and you were literally dumping more cash into them. And they had literally, some of them had little to no hopes of ever making any money. It's kind of, one, who did the due diligence? Two, who let Karp make this decision without challenging it? And technically speaking, this is why you need to have a board of directors that isn't just a bunch of cronies that you hired 20 years ago and have been self-promoting from inside. And any board member from an outside would have said, hey, this is a stupid strategy. Let's not go there. Let's do some more due diligence. But guess what? You got nothing but a bunch of yes men running around telling Alex Karp he's the smartest guy in the room, which may not necessarily be the case.
Okay, let's take a look at what Karp said about SPACs and how he justified it in 2021. I think this is some really, really, really good stuff. If you've been struggling to wrap your head around why they...
Should that change how we...
Well, you know, the SPAC things as an example, I think there's a lot of attention on the SPACs because obviously we're investing in some of the most interesting creative companies in the world, and they're relying on Foundry to get the business to a point where it can really be even more disruptive. But I'll tell you, the one of the coolest things, obviously, that it would be hard to notice externally is these people are going to push our product and help us understand, like, we can't rest on the fact that we're 5 years ahead of people, but tomorrow you're not 5 years ahead. Yeah. Like, so it's like, and these people pushing our product and pushing what they're going to do. These are relatively small companies.
So first, two quick things there. Number one, he says they had that in the context of Palantir.
Yeah. But compared to, but they're really pushing us to work on and by the way, it's super inspirational. It's like one of the things that's gotten us through the bad times. You were here for a lot of times that were not great, was our customers were so inspirational. Yeah. The nice thing about some of these small companies is they're inspirational. They really push us to build things, to do things that we hadn't done before in ways we hadn't thought about, and to deliver value that is not, maybe not in a way that we had preconceived. So I think it's easy to focus on like the biggest customers, and some of our biggest customers are also some of the coolest customers in the world, no doubt. But a lot of these agile kind of custom customers we're interacting with, either because they're buying our software or because they're using our software, they're just under the gun.
Yeah.
I think Wejo, Sarcos Robotics, Black Sky, Lilium, and Tritium Charging. Those are the 5 I would put my money on. The rest of them, we don't know what happened.
Yeah, the Black Sky was also an investment to improve their software too, though.
Yes, their Meta Constellation stuff. Yep.
So
among the SPACs, I agree that some of them were good, but some of them were just retarded. And I don't understand what the due diligence went into that, because especially though, like the Bird Global, the one with the scooter company.
That was bad. That was bad.
So my question is, who the hell was doing the due diligence on these SPAC deals to say, hey, let's look at our counterparty, make sure our counterparty can actually survive to the point where we actually get paid back,
Yeah, David Sachs also invested in Bird Global, I think in like a Series A or Series B, and he didn't distribute the returns to the LPs when they went public. And now the stock has collapsed, and I don't know if his LPs actually got returns from that. I think Peter Thiel also. So I think that's why they kind of invested. It was like that's just my hypothetical thinking. That's the only way I can justify them investing in birds, to be honest. Maybe Peter was involved in that, but yeah, I mean, he took ownership for SPACs, and SPACs collapsed. Okay, let's talk about what he said about the stock price. He was telling Andrew Ross Sorkin. He actually said something really cool. So he said when the stock price was $40, they were worth $100 billion. He didn't think he was that good. And when the stock price is $6 now, worth $14 billion, he doesn't think he's that bad. How did you guys think about that dichotomy of him as a leader talking about where he thinks about the stock price in relationship to his performance as well?
I'll go with that first. I'll just be honest. That's one of those things that CEOs have really they have control over the stock price, but you can't fault them for that too much, because there are so many events that happen on the macro level where the stock price can go up and down, left and right. And that's something that Alex Karp did actually answer very correctly, saying, look, my job is to run the company, not look at the stock price every day. Because if you have a CEO who's looking at the stock and literally running the company just based off of the stock price, then you're pretty much messed up. Then you're not going to be investing for growth. You're not going to be investing for the next thing. You're going to be investing to try to get your stock price higher. And that eventually will lead to the collapse of the company operating, So, and I've seen that happen in so many cases where literally CEOs will be like, oh, well, you know what, let's just buy back shares to raise the stock price, so that everyone can feel good, without realizing that no, right now is not the time to be buying back shares. It should be to invest in the business so that it can survive another 5 years and possibly hit a point where they can hit an S curve and grow exponentially. So in that regard, I can't fault Alex Karp, and the response that he had was absolutely correct, saying that my job as CEO is not to watch the stock price. It's to make the company successful over the long term. Though I will say one thing. As an employee, I bet you a lot of them did not like that response, because a lot of employees that were hired in the last 2 years, they've been paid in a ton of stock. And to see half your net worth disappear in the matter of a couple of years, it's not exactly what it's.
But that's not only Palantir. That's every tech worker on the planet.
That's true. That's true.
Steve, your thoughts on what he had to say about the stock?
Yeah, I was happy with it. I didn't think there was anything bad with or wrong with what he said. And if he had said, oh, we should be valued where we were, I mean, he'd be talking like a crazy person. So I was fine with it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was fine with this. It was very interesting, him saying, I don't think I was that good. I don't think I was that bad. He does think, right, by saying, I don't think we're that bad. And he mentioned like they're growing U.S. commercial a lot better. I mean, he obviously thinks that they're undervalued. And he believes that the market will come to their senses at one point. But maybe the fair valuation is 20, and maybe that's a 5x from here, or 4x, whatever, and it might take a couple of years to get there. Yeah.
I would say it's like I said, it comes down to focus on the product, focus on your clients, focus on executing, and the stock price will fix itself. You in the short term, you can mechanically raise the price here and there by manipulating certain things on your balance sheet to get it to raise higher. But that doesn't mean jack squat
If
when
a
it comes to long
short-term
term.
fix, they'll get found
Yeah.
out by the markets.
Exactly.
He needs to drive revenue, to drive incremental growth, drive margins, and the free cash flow and profits will follow in the future. His biggest thing is he needs more deals, more customers, and more customers paying for more services.